The desert of Zurathar was not made for life. The heat could melt armor, the sand could bury ships, and the wind was like knives cutting across the skin. Even the air tasted like dry metal. No human was ever meant to survive there, and most aliens avoided it too. But still, there they were. Corporal Reed Mason lay half buried in sand, blinking against the bright sunlight. His lips were cracked, his throat was dry, smoke still rose in the distance from the crash site. The diplomatic transport had exploded on impact, scattering metal and bodies across the dunes. His ears were ringing, his body hurt, but he was alive. Reed pushed himself up slowly. The ship's wreckage was in pieces behind him, like a broken bird dropped from the sky. He could already see the sand starting to swallow it. He had to move. Someone might be alive. His boots sank into the burning ground as he staggered toward the wreck. His mission had been simple: escort the alien queen of the Zurai to a peace summit with human leaders, a historic event. But then something had gone wrong, a sudden blast, systems failure, and now they were here, in the sand sea. Reed reached the main part of the ship. Half of it was gone, melted in the fire. He stepped over bodies, burned, broken. A few were Zurai guards with their smooth blue skin and tall armor. Some were human crew. Then he heard something, a soft sound, a weak breath. He followed it. Near a collapsed beam trapped under metal and sand, he found her, Queen Thalvera. Her royal armor was shattered. Her skin, a pale silver blue, was covered in dust and blood. A long gash ran down her leg, and one of her arms looked twisted. She was barely conscious, her breathing shallow. Reed dropped to his knees beside her. "Your Majesty?" he said carefully. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened slowly, glowing pale gold. She blinked at him. "You... human?" she whispered. "Yes. Corporal Mason, I was part of your escort." He looked around. "I think we're the only ones left." She closed her eyes. "The guards gone?" He nodded. "All of them. We need to move. This ship's going to get buried in a day. We have to find shelter. Help." She tried to sit up but winced and collapsed. Her leg was bad, broken, maybe worse. She couldn't walk. "There's an old human outpost," Reed said. 90 miles northwest. It's abandoned but has a comms tower. I can send a signal from there." She shook her head weakly. "Too far. Leave me. Save yourself." He gave a tired smile. "Sorry, Your Majesty. That's not how I was raised." He took his survival pack, water, heat shield, a medical kit, and wrapped her leg. Then he knelt in front of her, turning his back. "Hold on," he said. "What are you doing?" "Carrying you," Reed said. "It's either that or we both die here." She hesitated, then reached out with her good arm and held onto his shoulder. Gently, he lifted her up, adjusting her weight across his back. She was light for her size, taller than him, but lean. Still, the heat made everything heavier. With a deep breath, he started walking. The desert showed no mercy. Each step felt like dragging his feet through molten ash. The sun overhead was merciless. There were no trees, no shadows, just endless golden dunes and the sound of wind. Reed moved slowly, careful not to fall. Every hour he stopped to rest. He gave the queen sips of water from his flask, just enough to keep her alive. He took nothing for himself. By nightfall, he dug a shallow shelter in the sand, using emergency panels from the crash. He placed Thalvera down gently and collapsed beside her. "You are foolish," she whispered. "Been called worse," he said with a small laugh. "You'll die for me. I'm a soldier. I follow orders. Saving you. That's a good order to follow." She stared at him in silence. He couldn't read her expression. The Zurai were not easy to understand. They didn't show emotions like humans. That night, the temperature dropped fast. The desert, once burning, turned icy cold. Reed wrapped her in thermal cloth, then lay beside her, his body shielding her from the wind. She didn't protest this time. The next day, the journey continued. Reed carried her across rough hills and deep sand valleys. His legs were cramping, his throat burned, his back screamed with pain, but he kept walking. Thalavera began speaking more. Short words, questions. "Why save me?" she asked once. "You're not just a queen, you're a person," Reed said simply. She was quiet after that. Later, when they stopped, she tried to use her own energy to heal part of her leg. Her kind had psychic abilities, limited but real. She managed to dull the pain slightly, but it exhausted her. Reed held her hand as she trembled with effort. "Don't do that again," he told her. "Save your strength." She looked at him strangely. "You are not what I expected, human." "Yeah," he said with a smile. "You're not exactly what I expected either." By the third day, Reed's body began to fail. His water was gone. His lips bled when he spoke. His vision blurred. Still, he didn't stop. Thalavera tried to convince him again, begged him even, to leave her and go on alone. He refused. They hid from sand beasts. Reed used fire flares to scare off a stalker, lizard. One night, a firestorm passed nearby. They buried themselves in the sand to survive it. It was hell, but they were still alive. Late into the fourth day, they reached the edge of a canyon, one Reed remembered from old maps. Beyond it lay the human outpost. Just 2 more days of walking. He could almost feel hope, but then he collapsed. Thalavera slid off his back and hit the sand, groaning in pain. She pulled herself beside him. His eyes were half closed. His skin was burning. "No, not now," she whispered. She pressed her hand to his forehead and reached inside, using her last psychic energy to slow his fever, reduce the heat in his blood. She had never done that for a non-Zurai before. It was dangerous, but she didn't care. He gasped and blinked. "Queen," he mumbled. "You will not die," she said. "Not before I tell my people what you did." Reed coughed a dry laugh. "Well, better start thinking of a good story." She almost smiled. That night, they rested under a rocky ledge. Reed was barely able to move, but he drank from a tiny moisture trap he'd set earlier. Thalavera leaned against him. "You are strange," she said softly. "Yeah, so I've heard. I thought humans were selfish. You are not." Reed looked up at the stars. "You're not what I thought either. You're brave and stubborn." She gave him a curious look. "You carried your enemy across a death desert. Why?" Reed met her eyes. "Because I don't want enemies. I want peace, and I believe in saving people, even alien queens." Thalavera was quiet, but inside, something had changed. The next morning, the desert greeted them with silence and endless heat. Corporal Reed Mason woke with sand in his eyes and pain in every bone. His arms, legs, and back felt like fire. Carrying the alien queen for days had turned his body into something broken. Still, he sat up and looked beside him. Queen Thalavera was awake too. Her silver-blue skin looked pale. Her leg was worse, swollen and bleeding again, but her golden eyes were sharp. "How are you feeling?" Reed asked, voice hoarse. "I do not feel," she answered calmly. "Zurai are trained to ignore pain." Reed gave a weak smile. "Well, that's one skill I could use right now." He offered her a sip of water from the moisture trap. It had collected only a small amount overnight, barely enough for one person. He gave it to her. She frowned. "You did not drink." "I can manage," he said. She stared at him. "You are a soldier." You know that's foolish. Probably, Reed said. But if one of us is going to make it out of here, it should be the one who actually matters. I matter to my people, she said. But your choices are confusing. Reed didn't reply. He simply picked her up again, placed her carefully on his back, and stood. The desert stretched before them like a cruel joke, miles and miles of blazing sand, dunes like waves frozen in place. No sign of life, no clouds, no wind. Reed took a deep breath and started walking. Hours passed. The sun beat down on them like a hammer. Every step sunk deep into the burning sand. Reed had to lean forward to keep balance, his arms locked under her legs, sweat pouring down his back. Thalevra spoke little that day. Her body was weakening fast. At one point, she lost consciousness, her head resting on Reed's shoulder. He felt her skin, cold. Not a good sign. He stopped and laid her down under a metal sheet to create shade. She stirred, eyes fluttering open. "You should go," she whispered. "Leave me. You'll die." Reed knelt beside her. "I told you." "That's not an option. You are stubborn." "I'm human," he said with a tired grin. "It's kind of our thing." She looked at him in silence for a moment. Then her voice became softer. "When I was crowned queen, I swore to protect my people. I never expected a human would try to protect me, not like this." "You're more than a queen," Reed said. "You're a person. You breathe, you bleed, you feel. That's enough." No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not her generals, not her advisors, not even her late consort. Her heart beat just a little faster. The desert tested them again in the afternoon. Dark shadows circled above, flying predators known as razor wings. They hunted anything that moved in open ground. Reed saw them and quickly dropped low, crawling toward a rock formation with Thalevra on his back. He reached a narrow crack and squeezed them both inside. They sat still, listening as the wings screamed above them. One swooped low, its sharp claws scratching the rock wall just inches from Reed's face. Thalevra held her breath. Reed stayed perfectly still. The creatures passed after a long time. Inside. The rock shelter. They rested. Reed leaned against the wall, eyes closed. He could feel her breathing beside him. "You should sleep," she said softly. "I can't. I keep hearing sand moving. My brain won't shut off." "I can help," she said. Reed looked at her. "How?" "My kind has a small gift. A way to calm the mind. We use it in royal chambers to help warriors before battle." He hesitated, then nodded. She reached out and placed 2 fingers on his temple. His mind slowed. His pain faded slightly. The burning in his muscles softened. He didn't fall asleep, but the world stopped spinning for a little while. When she pulled her hand away, he felt like he could breathe again. "Thank you," he whispered. "I have never used that on a human before. Guess I'm lucky to be your first," he said, smiling. She blinked slowly. "Yes, lucky." That night, the sand turned cold again. The temperature dropped so fast that frost formed on the outer rocks. Reed lit a small heat pack, his last one, and wrapped Thalevra tightly in a survival blanket. She was shaking now, not from cold, but from weakness. He laid beside her, arm around her shoulder. "I never asked," he said. "Do you have family, someone waiting for you?" She shook her head. "No siblings, no mate, only duty. I was born to lead." "And you do it alone?" "I have advisors, generals, but they do not understand me." Reed was quiet for a moment. "I joined the military after losing my brother. I didn't know what to do with myself. Thought maybe saving others would give me a purpose." She looked at him. "Has it?" "I'm not sure," he said, "but carrying you, I feel like this matters. Talavera looked into his eyes. It does. For the first time, she allowed her head to rest on his chest. They said nothing more. The fifth day began with danger. Reed was moving across a dune with Talavera on his back when the sand shifted. Violently beneath them, he froze. The ground rumbled, then it burst open. Giant sand serpent, a massive beast with scale-covered skin and glowing red eyes, erupted from below. Its mouth opened wide, full of needle-like teeth. Reed jumped back just in time. The creature slammed down where they had just stood, shaking. The ground. He ran, legs pumping hard, heart thudding. The queen held onto him tightly, one arm around his neck. The serpent chased them, diving in and out of the sand like a wave. Reed reached a cliff edge and slid down the side, landing hard. The serpent tried to follow but crashed into the rocks, dazed. Reed didn't wait. He kept moving. By the time they stopped, he was covered in bruises, bleeding from one arm. The queen tried to sit up, but fell. Reed gently touched her cheek. You okay? Yes, thanks to you. That was too close, he muttered. She nodded. You fought for me again. I'd do it every time, he said. She stared at him, then reached up and took his hand. That evening, they saw something on the horizon. A shape. A tower. It was the human outpost, still far but close enough to hope. Reed almost laughed. We're going to make it, he said. She gave a faint smile. I believe you. They set up camp one last time beneath the stars. Talavera could barely speak now. Reed shared the last drops of water with her and sat beside her. She leaned against him again. Reed, she whispered. Yeah? When this is over, when I'm safe, I won't forget. He looked down at her. Forget what? You. Your hands, your voice, your strength. Reed said nothing. His heart beat faster. She looked into his eyes. You are not just a soldier. You are something more. Reed stared at the stars, wondering how a journey through fire and sand could bring him closer to someone he was supposed to call alien. But she didn't feel alien anymore. She felt close, human, even. The sixth day in the desert had begun. Corporal Reed Mason felt like he was carrying a mountain on his back. Every step was a battle. His legs shook, his lips were dry and cracked, his armor was coated with layers of dust, sweat, and dried blood. But the outpost was now just one more day away. He could see it when the wind cleared the air. A tall metal tower standing alone on the edge of the endless desert. Hope. But hope wasn't enough to stop pain. Queen Talavera was silent on his back. Her body was cold again. Her breathing was soft, too soft. Reed knew she was fading. He stopped near a dry ridge and laid her down. He knelt beside her, searching her face. She didn't open her eyes. No, no, no. Not now, he muttered. He pulled out the last medical patch from his survival kit and placed it gently on her neck. It gave a weak pulse of heat and medicine. Into her skin, her eyes opened slowly. You still here? She whispered. Of course, Reed said. You didn't think I'd quit now, did you? I thought you might be smart. Reed gave a tired smile. Smart people don't get the job done. Stubborn people do. She gave a faint chuckle, barely a sound, but real. You are both. They walked again that day. Not far, not fast. Just forward. Reed dragged his feet over each dune, carefully balancing the queen on his back. His vision blurred from time to time. His thoughts wandered. But he forced himself to stay alert. They passed bones half buried in the sand. Remains. Of beasts, travelers, or maybe both. Even the sun seemed to grow angrier, burning the sand beneath his feet until he thought his boots would melt. By late afternoon, a terrible wind picked up. It wasn't a normal storm. It was hotter. darker. Smoke began to rise over the horizon. Reed stopped and stared. A firestorm. Damn, he muttered. Firestorms were rare but deadly. Huge waves of flame created by sunbursts and dry lightning. They could burn everything in. Their path, flesh, stone, and even steel. There was no time to run. No chance to escape. He searched the ground, desperate. There, a narrow crevice under a ridge, just wide enough to hide them. He rushed toward it and slipped inside, placing the queen gently next to him. The space was tight, barely enough room. For the two of them to sit side by side, he pulled out his heat shield and wrapped it over both of them. Then the storm came. The firestorm roared over them like a monster. The air outside turned orange and red. Wind screamed through the cracks in the rock. Reed held the shield tight with both hands, covering the queen completely with his body. The heat was terrible. It felt like his skin would melt. He gritted his teeth, holding on, refusing to move. Thalvera clung to him, her hands trembling. "You're burning," she said. "I'll live," Reed whispered. "No, you'll die." "I've come too far to die now." She looked into his face, his eyes full of pain, sweat dripping down his forehead, his jaw clenched. He was breaking, and yet he didn't stop. He protected her like she was the most precious thing in the universe. She reached up and touched his face. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." "Why?" Reed looked at her. "Because I care." Her breath caught. No one had ever said that to her. Not like this. Not as a ruler. Not as a Zurai. But as a person, as Thalvera. The firestorm passed after what felt like forever. When it was gone, the world outside was black and dead. The sand glowed with heat. The rocks were scorched. But they were alive. Barely. Reed collapsed. Beside her, body shaking, eyes half closed. "Reed," she said softly, brushing a finger down his cheek. "I'm okay," he murmured. "No, you're not." He laughed faintly. "Well, not yet. But soon." That night they stayed hidden in the crack. Reed couldn't walk anymore. His legs were swollen, his arms wouldn't move. He had given everything. Thalvera used her psychic power again, but it was weak. All she could do was ease a little of his pain. "I can't let you die," she said. "Then keep me awake. Talk to me." So she did. She told him stories of her childhood in the royal palace of Zurathar, of learning ancient rituals and war songs, of lonely nights staring out at the stars. He told her about Earth, about green forests and rivers, about fishing with his brother before the war, about laughing around campfires and dreaming about flying through space. "You would like my world," he said. "I want to see it one day." "You will," he whispered. They stared at each other in the dark. Then Thalvera said something he didn't expect. "I have never trusted anyone like I trust you." Reed blinked. "You don't even know me." "I know your heart." Silence. "You risked your life. Not for power or fame or politics, but for me. Not the queen. Just me." Reed didn't answer, because it was true. The next morning, they made one last effort. Reed could no longer carry her. His body refused. So Thalvera insisted on walking. She used a broken piece of metal as a crutch. Every step was slow, painful. But she stood beside him, arm over his shoulder, and together they limped through the final miles. It was painful, ugly, hard. But it was beautiful, too. Together, they looked like survivors, warriors, and finally, they reached the gates of the old human outpost. It was a small structure, half buried by sand, but the comms tower still stood. Reed collapsed beside the door. Thalvera pressed the control panel. It opened. Inside, they found old supplies. A little water, a first aid kit, and the working communication device. Reed dragged himself to the controls and activated the emergency beacon. Rescue signal. Sent, he breathed. Thalvera caught him as he nearly fell. She helped him lie down on the floor. We made it, she whispered. Reed nodded slowly. Then everything went black. He woke up 2 days later. He was in a medical bed on a human ship. Clean, rested, hydrated, alive. A nurse came in, smiled, and said, "You have a visitor." Thalvera walked into the room. She was dressed in a long silver robe, her skin healed, her golden eyes glowing. Reed stared. "You look better." "So do you," she said softly. She sat beside him, holding his hand. "The rescue team found us in time," she said. "Thanks to you," Reed nodded. "I didn't want to fail you." "You didn't," she said. "You gave me more than life. You gave me a reason to believe in humans again." There was a long silence. Then she said, "When we return to my world, the council will ask what happened." "What will you tell them?" She smiled gently. "That a human carried me across a death desert and carried my heart with him." Reed's eyes widened. Thalvera leaned closer. "I want you by my side, not as a soldier, not as a hero, but as a man I trust, a man I care for." Reed blinked. "You're asking me to—" "Yes," she said. "Be my consort, my partner, my choice." Reed stared at her, this alien queen who had once seemed so far away, so impossible. Now she was right here, looking at him like he was the only person that mattered. He smiled. "I guess I'll need a crown." She laughed softly and held his hand tighter. Corporal Reed Mason walked slowly through the wide hallway of the human command ship, his body still stiff from days of recovery. Each step reminded him of the desert, the heat, the pain, the long, endless walk through sand and fire. But it also reminded him of her, Queen Thalvera. She had saved his life just as he had saved hers. Now she was on the other side of the ship, in a private diplomatic chamber meeting with both human and Zurai leaders. She had called for peace, demanded unity, and made one unexpected request, that Reed be present at the next council, not as a soldier, but as her chosen consort. Reed still couldn't believe it. A queen wanted him by her side, a human, a nobody, from a small colony on Mars. He had no title, no rank high enough for such an honor. But she didn't care about titles. She cared about him. That morning, the ship received news. A Zurai general, Varkesh, one of Thalvera's political enemies, had rejected her return. He claimed she had been compromised by humans. He even accused her of faking the crash to weaken the Zurai throne. Thalvera's position was now in danger, and so was the peace treaty. She called for Reed to meet her privately before the summit. Inside, her quarters, the room was quiet and filled with soft blue light. Zurai symbols glowed on the walls, and strange music hummed in the background. Thalvera stood near the window, wearing a long, dark robe. Her golden eyes watched the stars. Reed stepped in and bowed slightly. "You called for me, Your Majesty?" She turned and smiled gently. "After what we've been through, I thought you'd call me Thalvera." Reed smiled. "All right. Thalvera." She walked to him and looked into his eyes. "There's something I must ask you," she said. "Go ahead." She hesitated. For the first time since the desert, she looked unsure. "My people are divided. Varkesh is trying to turn the council against me. He believes I am weak now, because of you." Reed's smile faded. "Because I saved you? Because I let you touch me, carry me, sleep beside me. Because I chose you," she said softly. "To them, that is weakness." "Then they're blind," Reed said. She looked away. The final meeting is tomorrow. If they reject me, the Zure will fall into civil war. Humans will lose their chance at peace. Everything we suffered for will be lost. Reed took a breath. Then what do we do? You must come with me. Stand beside me in the council chamber. Not as a soldier, but as the man I trust, the one who carried me when no one else could. Reed nodded. I'll be there. She stepped closer. Even if they hate you. I've been hated before, he said. But I've never stood for something this important before. She reached up and touched his face. I chose you because you saw me, not as a queen, but as a person. That is rare, even among my own. Kind. He gently took her hand. You didn't just survive that desert. You became stronger, and I saw the real you. They stood in silence for a long time. Then Talavera whispered, Thank you, Reed, for not leaving me behind. The next day, the council chamber was full. Half Zurai, half human. Leaders, generals, ambassadors, dozens of cameras recorded. Every second for both worlds to see. Talavera entered with her head held high, wearing the silver crown of her people. Behind her walked Reed, the humans whispered. The Zurai stared, but Talavera ignored them all. She stood before the assembly and began to speak. I am Talavera of the Zurai. You know me as your queen, but today I stand here not just as a ruler, but as someone who has suffered, who has struggled, who has been saved. Her voice echoed through the chamber. I was left for dead in the desert. My guards perished. My body was broken. No Zurai came for me, but a human soldier carried me, 90 miles through fire and storm. He gave me his food, his strength, his life. She turned to Reed. And now, I ask you to accept him as my consort, not out of romance, not out of custom, but because he represents something greater than bloodlines or thrones. Varkesh stood. This is an insult to our people, he shouted. She has brought a human into our most sacred halls, a low-born creature. Talavera stepped forward. Careful, Varkesh. That creature did more for your queen than you ever have. He pointed at Reed. He's a threat, a symbol of weakness. Reed stepped forward. I'm not here for power, he said clearly. I didn't carry her for a reward. I did it because she mattered, because people matter. I've seen death. I've seen war. I want something better. The chamber grew quiet. One Zure elder stood. Did you ask for nothing in return? Reed shook his head. I didn't ask. She offered. I never thought I was worthy of her. I still don't. But I believe in her. And if you believe in her too, then let her lead. The elder sat down slowly. Varkesh looked around. He saw that many eyes were no longer on him, but on the queen and the human who had nearly died for her. He turned and walked out of the chamber without another word. The room was silent. Then someone began to clap. First a human, then a Zure. Soon the entire room stood in applause. Talavera looked at Reed, her eyes shining. That night, the stars above the human ship were clear and bright. Reed stood on the observation deck, staring at the planets in the distance. Talavera joined him wearing a simple robe, her crown left behind. They accepted, she said softly. I know. We did it. Reed looked at her. No, you did it. She smiled. We both did. They stood side by side. Then Talavera reached out and held his hand. Will you come with me? She asked. To Zurathar? To my world, my court, my life, not as a visitor, but as my choice. Reed looked at her fingers wrapped around his. He remembered the heat, the storms, the pain, and the quiet moments where he had felt more alive than ever. Yes, he said. I'll go with you. She leaned closer. Good, because I don't want to walk alone anymore. Far away on the desert planet where it all began, the wind still howled over empty dunes, But now, somewhere deep in that endless sand, two sets of footprints remained, carved into the memory of the land, a queen and the man who carried her. The grand hall of the Zurai Palace was filled with light and sound. The walls shimmered with glowing symbols, ancient and proud. It was the heart of the Zurai world, where kings and queens had ruled for thousands of years. And now, Queen Thalvera stood before her people, hand in hand with a human soldier, Corporal Reed Mason. The room fell silent as she spoke. "My people," she began, her voice calm and strong. "Today you have seen a journey unlike any other, a journey through fire, sand, and pain, but also a journey of trust, hope, and courage." Her golden eyes scanned the crowd. "This man, Reed Mason, carried me when I could not walk. He saved my life, and in doing so, saved our chance for peace." There were murmurs. Some whispered in surprise, others in doubt. The council was still divided, and some were unhappy with the idea of a human so close to the throne. But Thalvera was ready. "I have made my choice," she continued, "not because of tradition or power or fear, but because I believe in a future where humans and Zurai stand together. Reed is not just my protector, he is my partner." Reed swallowed hard. He never imagined a moment like this. But as he looked at the queen, he saw strength, beyond royalty. She was a woman who had survived deserts and storms, and now stood firm for her people. The High Elder, an ancient Zurai with deep blue skin and silver hair, stood up. "Queen Thalvera," he said slowly, "your courage is clear, but this union, it breaks with every law we have known. Are you prepared for the consequences?" Thalvera met his gaze without fear. "I am." After the speech, the council began its debate. Some argued tradition must be kept. Others said the queen's bond with Reed was a sign of new strength. Hours passed. Reed stayed quietly beside Thalvera, holding her hand when she needed. When the debate seemed endless, the High Elder called for a vote. The chamber grew tense. The vote began. One by one, voices echoed. "Accept! Reject! Accept!" The votes were close, but when the final count came, the queen's choice was accepted. Cheers filled the hall. Reed looked at Thalvera, amazed. "You did it," he whispered. She smiled softly. "We did it." Days later, preparations began for the formal ceremony. Reed learned the ways of the Zurai, their customs, language, and history. He trained to speak before the court, to stand with pride beside his queen. Thalvera watched him closely, proud of his progress. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the palace, she invited him to the gardens. The air was cool, filled with the scent of strange, alien flowers. Soft music played from hidden stones. She took his hand and led him to a quiet place beneath a glowing tree. "Reed," she said, "when I was alone in the desert, I thought I would die there. But you gave me life." He smiled, squeezing her hand. "And you gave me a reason to live," he said. She looked into his eyes, her voice barely a whisper. "Will you be my husband?" Reed's heart pounded. "Yes," he said simply. "With all my heart." They embraced. The desert outside, once harsh and unforgiving, seemed to soften under the light of their union. The day of the ceremony arrived. The palace was decorated with glowing banners and colors of both Earth and Zurathar. Leaders from both worlds gathered, humans, Zurai, and others, watching as history was made. Thalvera wore a shimmering robe, her crown shining brighter than ever. Reed stood beside her, dressed in a ceremonial uniform crafted for him, his eyes full of awe and determination. The High Elder spoke the ancient words of marriage, mixing Zurai language with human phrases. When they exchanged rings, crafted from desert stones and earth metals, the crowd erupted in applause. It was more than a wedding. It was a promise of peace, a promise that two worlds could come together. After the ceremony, the new queen and her consort stood on the palace balcony, looking out over the city. Thalvera leaned into Reed's side. Together, she said, "We will build a new future." Reed smiled. "I'm ready." The desert wind whispered around them, not with threats anymore, but with hope. And so, the story of the soldier who carried an alien queen across a deadly desert ended, not with sorrow, not with war, but with love and a new beginning.